Mayor Gavin Newsom is here with us today. It's such an honor. And I know that there are many elected officials in the room. I'm going to wait maybe to the end to kind of ask you if you can stand and just be recognized by everyone. But we live in such a very unique and tolerant and wonderful place. And many of the elected officials here in the room have actually taken a risk and gone out on a limb and made sure that we have policies that protect our community. They go out on a limb to make sure that they advocate for HIV and AIDS. We have a community here that is very supportive of green initiatives. And it is a really wonderful thing to see so many people here that are looking into the future. And I think that when you hear Mayor Gavin Newsom speak, you will understand that he is a representative that speaks to what we all look forward to in a progressive movement in the future. And so I would like to take this moment to introduce San Francisco Mayor Gavin Newsom.
100 centers around the country. I've never seen anything this nice. So this is a big deal. Thank you for the opportunity to allow me to say a few words. I'm down here. We're just got in yesterday, and I'll be here through tomorrow, and then we're off to Washington, D.C., and to New York and Boston. Well, I don't know where else I'm going after that, and then back home to San Francisco. I'm very close to making an announcement to run for governor out in California. So I appreciate it. But I thought, just in the context of our times and what happened remarkably yesterday in Iowa, what's happening in Vermont, what happened in Connecticut and Massachusetts, and also what happened here with Amendment 2 and Prop 8 on the negative side of the ledger in California, Proposition 8 going down, and Amendment 2, or both of them actually succeeding in this case, and what that means. Just give you a sense of context of at least the way we're looking at things out in the West Coast. It was my lifetime, and this also shows my age, but remarkably my lifetime, because I thought this was just in the history books. Not 1927, not 1937 or 40 or 57, it was 1967 when blacks could not marry whites in the United States of America in 16 states. People need to be reminded of that. In 1967, there were 16 states that denied interracial marriage. And they argued against interracial marriage because it was going to destroy the tradition that is marriage. That tradition being firmly entrenched in the context that marriage should be only a people of the same race. And now people were going to destroy that tradition by having the audacity to marry outside the race. Specific. Let me give you the judge at the time, 1965. It led to the decision ultimately in 1967, the Loving versus the state of Virginia decision. The judge said the following: the judge said, God put different races on different continents for a reason. God never wanted the races to mix. So they used religion as the framework. Of course, religion was always used to interrupt rights of people to get married as well, because Protestants couldn't marry Catholics in this country. It's tradition. You must be of the same religion, because somehow marriage is exclusively a religious construct. You know better. This country knows better, though the narrative of the time is being played out in our time, isn't it? Tradition will be destroyed if people of the same sex get married. Religion dictates it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. You've seen the protesters. I live with them, trust me. In my home, everywhere I go, at the airport, they're following me with signs. Shame, shame. There we are, 40 years later, and we're still making these same arguments. But here we are, more interestingly, 55 years later, after the landmark Brown versus Board of Education decision. 55 years this year, where we determined, appropriately so, and adjudicated the Supreme Court that separate is not equal. How many politicians of all stripes have you already heard out there on the campaign trails, the Jefferson-Jackson dinners and all these things, waxing poetically about the principles of Brown v. Board of Education? Separate is not equal, a march of equality, the great moments in our history have been the struggle for civil rights and advancing these principles. It's not just ending with Barack Obama. There's so much more work to be done, but we're proud. Yet those same politicians that either have given those speeches this year or are about to give those speeches at your dinners will stand there and they'll run the 90-yard dash as it relates to the rights of the LGBTQ community. And that's wrong. And we've got to disenthrall ourselves that we should accept that we can continue to have elected officials that say to us privately one thing, but don't have the courage to stand up and fight for us publicly. It's wrong. Separate is not equal. Marriage is marriage. Civil unions are something totally different. And I just don't accept that we should accept that anymore. Really. We've got to fight for it. But to see what's happened in the courts, and to continue to see what's happening in the courts, it gives me some solace. Because remember, it's in the courts that the entire rights movement has been advanced in the history of this country. It's been the courts. It's not been because public opinion has always been in our direction. Remember in 1967, when Richard Loving, by the way, this is why the decision ultimately was advanced, Richard Loving married Mildred Jeter. And for the audacity of falling in love and saying, I do, Richard was sentenced to 1 year in prison for saying, I do. And because of what Richard ultimately did and the Loving family, we had Loving versus State of Virginia in that activist court, the unanimous decision of the U.S. Supreme Court overturning those remaining 16 state laws banning interracial marriage. Courts stood there against public opinion. 70%, 7-0, I don't make this up. I have 3 polls, I kid you not, 69, 70, and 70%. I have them in my drawer. I wanted to see these. I didn't believe that it could be so true in my lifetime that 70% of the public, American people, this country, 70% of American people could oppose interracial marriage, yet they did. Imagine if the let the people decide argument won out. We wouldn't have interracial marriage. I promise we would not have it today. You still look at public opinion polls. White Americans, it's alarming their opposition to interracial dating still today in 2008, 2009, 2010. These polls are alarming. So the reality is the rights movement has always been advanced by the principles that define the best of this country, and that's the Constitution. Think about this. The Constitution has been amended since the Bill of Rights about 21 times, each and every time to expand people's rights, not to deny people's rights. In California, we actually took rights away. We didn't just deny something that hadn't been extended. Since May of last year, people were legally getting married 18,000 couples. And as I was saying a moment ago, it's not just the couples. It's their friends and family. It's their mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, aunts and uncles, their kids and their grandkids that are also dramatically impacted by these decisions. This is about families. This is a movement that's so much bigger than just the LGBTQ community. It's about all of us. It's about what kind of world we want to live in, what kind of people we really represent. And are we going to walk the proverbial talk? Or are we going to talk about the rights movement and the importance of the law? You cannot run the 90-yard dash when someone's fundamental rights. It's wrong. Enough's enough. If you don't accept that I have a fundamental right to live my life out loud, I can't listen to what you have to say about healthcare, education, the environment, or poverty eradication. Because you know what? If you're not going to fight for that basic principle, that foundation that defines the best of everything, then I don't trust that you're going to build on any foundation that's that rocky, anything that's lasting and real. Plus, I don't believe you, because you just told me about the principles of equality, and you just told me about the fact that you support civil rights, and you support gender equality, that you claim to support the rights of the LGBT community, but not full rights, not equal rights. Advance, and we've got to fight for equal rights, full rights, and that's why I'm just very thankful and very proud of the work you're doing out here. And as I said, I hope you notice what we're doing, but I just want to leave this with you. We certainly notice what you're doing.